Applause towards you. I'll tell him like that. Yeah!
If so, then please help me in welcoming the only man who can cure this sickness, Dr. Ron.
That the system that we've had, not for the past 3 years, I go after our president as much as anybody else, but it isn't the last 3 years that brought us to this crisis. And the last administration is far from my favorite, let me tell you. And it didn't occur there. It's occurred over a long time. Liberties aren't lost overnight. And freedoms that we've lost have been eroded, and it's gradual and steady. But now we're at a crisis point. There's not much more to lose because when a president announces that it can assassinate American citizens and the Congress can give him the power to arrest all Americans anytime, any place without we're coming desperately close to saying that we're losing if we haven't lost already our republic. So it's time to stand up. The American people are waking up. They're letting the message be heard. Unfortunately, Washington, most of Washington, other candidates are pretty much sleeping. They don't know what we're talking about. And I think the message has to be loud and clear and make sure they hear us.
Yeah!
Founders said that because they had gone through runaway inflation with the continental dollar, they said that only gold and silver can be legal tender. It's still on the books. You couldn't print paper money. They said no emitting of bills of credit. But they don't emit bills of credit. They don't print. Well, they print a lot, but they just created by the computer. They could create $1 trillion a week if they want, and they literally did that. They generated $15 trillion worth of bailout money and credit during the crisis a few years ago. Not only did it bail out the people who didn't deserve to get bailed out in this country, they bailed out foreign banks and foreign countries and foreign central banks. It's the monetary system that is at fault, and the burden falls on the American people. It falls especially on the middle class. It falls on the poor. And there's a transfer of wealth, and there's a transfer of power. It is not representative of what a republic is supposed to be. So we have to fight for and get people to understand that a true republic honors and respects individual liberty and sound money. Responsibility to protect the value of the money, and they've been in business for 99 years right now, and they've lost 99% of the value of the dollar. And that's not a very good run. I think we should celebrate next year. I think we should have a bill and pass a bill. I'll be very glad to sign it. And that is the celebration of 100 years of the Federal Reserve. We're going to repeal the Federal Reserve.
Yeah!
They talked a little bit about cutting, and they said, yeah, we spend too much here, too much there. So the Congress tries to do something, and they flunk, and they say, well, we'll have a super committee, dump it on the lap of the super committee, and they made a super mess out of the whole thing. But then there were some automatic cuts. The automatic cuts just sounds wonderful. $1.2 trillion, that used to be a lot of money. And they're going to cut $1.2 trillion out of the budget over the next 10 years, but we're not allowed to start until 2013. So that's how serious they are. But the cuts aren't cuts. The automatic budget increases are about $10.5 trillion over the next 10 years. And they're going to cut $1.2 trillion over the next 10 years of the proposed increases. Well, that's not a cut. It's just trying to modify a little bit the proposed increases. Now, just to show, that's $100 billion a year of proposed increases that they're going to cut. Our national debt is going up $100 billion a month. So it's not going to get anywhere close. So I don't think they have a sincere thought at all about cutting. And it's understandable because they have been taught that it's wrong. The Keynesian economic theory is that if you get into a recession, regardless of the cause, the answer is the people should spend more money and borrow more money. What if you don't have a job? Or what if you maxed out on your credit cards? Or what if you can barely make your payments? You can't spend more money. And they say, well, we have an answer for that. Then the government has to spend more money. Well, where's the government? Well, we'll raise taxes. What if you can't raise raise taxes. That'll be a problem. Let's borrow more money. Well, there's a limit. Interest rates will go up if you borrow too much. Ah, they have a secret. We'll just print the money. And we'll keep spending it. And that is supposed to be the solution. So they actually believe that it's absolutely necessary to spend more money under these conditions. And it's wrong to back off and save. But capital comes from saving. Capital doesn't come from increasing the money supply. And it's a major fallacy. We did at one time have the largest middle class in the history of the world and the richest middle class. But that's not true anymore. If there is wealth around and you see it, believe me, there is debt behind it. It's a real mess. I had experience of practicing medicine before we had it. And medicine has gotten much worse. And everything government has done has interfered with the doctor-patient relationship. And that is what should drive medicine. The doctor and the patient relationship. When that happened, the doctor, lo and behold, always charged the least. Now, when there's third-party payment, whether it's insurance companies or government or whatever, doctors, hospitals, everybody, the forms are filled out and they always charge the maximum because of the way the system is. The labs do it, the hospitals do it, and then because of the inflation, they never can pay their bills. And then the government comes in and they put price controls on it, and it becomes a real mess. Medicare is in worse shape than Social Security, and it is not going to last. So I argue the case that we have to have priorities, we have to cut spending, but I haven't put on the top of my list of priorities that we cut medical care benefits for the elderly who have become dependent on the federal system, as well as children's health care. I don't think we should start with that, even though I don't think they should have been started. But now that there's dependent, we ought to be able to work our way out of it. And the only way we can do this, to preserve some of the medical care and to wean ourselves off, is to save the money someplace else. And of course, where I would start is saving hundreds of billions of dollars on the overseas spending. If a young person had the chance of putting $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 in a bank account and got to write it off, and he uses that money directly to pay his bills and go directly to the doctor and stay out of the emergency room for those cares, it would be much better. Believe me, the prices would come down. You should have as much competition as possible. And the doctor-patient relationship is very important. The government wants to know everything about a patient and medications and find out exactly what the doctor's prescribing. They want to monitor. But is it wise physicians that are doing this monitoring? No, it's a bunch of bureaucrats over in Washington that are going to do this. And it's going to cost a lot of money. And there's going to be a lot more doctors getting very angry and upset with this. And I predict right now, if this continues, there's going to be a lot more doctors that won't take Medicare or Medicaid at all, compounding our problem. We need to get the relationship of the doctor and the patient back together again and get the government and the corporation out of the middle. And I was called, and it was, I remember it very well because I was living in Detroit. I was in the middle of my residency.
Yeah.
I was anxious to leave, but I decided I better go. And so I went, and that was during the Cuban Missile Crisis. So I went and served and became a flight surgeon, and we moved to Texas for that. But at that time there was no declaration of war. You know, it just goes on, and then the president's got war. That was one of the things the revolution was fought about, because the king would declare the war and tax the colonists. And then the military came and occupied our country and would go into their houses and occupy our houses. And matter of fact, they would go into houses without search warrants, just as our government's doing to us right now. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to bring both liberals and conservatives, Republicans and Democrats and independents together about stopping all this spending and all these wars overseas. And why don't we agree to just bring the troops home? The wars that we've been fighting are fought with no declaration. The presidents make the decision, Congress defers to the executive branch and allows the president to do it. But I can promise you, as president, I would never fight a war that is not endorsed by the people through a vote by the Congress. That happened in World War II. We were attacked by Japan, and the Germans declared war against us. In less than 4 years, we were able to defeat both of them. These were huge fights that we had to. We've been in Afghanistan for 10 years, and nobody knows when it's going to end. It keeps getting getting worse, and nobody actually knows exactly why we're there. At least they don't tell us. Why were we in Iraq? Oh, because of weapons of mass destruction, because of Al-Qaeda. No weapons of mass destruction, no Al-Qaeda. And then we got in there. Guess what? Al-Qaeda's in Iraq right now. And they had no weapons of mass destruction. Now Iraq is more aligned with Iran. You know, and they're more allies because just of the politics of the nature that we have too many unintended consequences of these things that we do around the world, just as it is in economics. Unintended consequences. We want to do good for people, we end up doing bad for the people. And going overseas, they tell us they're supposed to do this, you know, for the benefit of the people. But it really doesn't work. There's a lot of other special interests involved. There's a lot of special interests, from oil to wars that have been going on forever across the world. And the countries end up in much worse shape. And we end up much more broke. And that is a big problem. The Constitution provides for something the founders advised for us to do. And that is be friends with people, even if they're different and even if they aren't perfect. In the debates, I said, when we're perfect, maybe we can lecture those other countries about theirs. We have thousands and thousands of diplomats in Washington and around the world. I just wish they would be used once in a while. One other president, there's been several others that had military experience, but the one most recently that had the most was, of course, Eisenhower. And he had very strong advice when he left. He said, watch out for the military-industrial complex. They may be promoting wars just to sell weapons. And boy, there is a lot of activity and a lot of credibility in that argument. And Eisenhower, I thought, set a great precedent about how to be restrained. And today, though, we hear some of the other candidates say, do not sound very restrained. They sound like they're itching for a fight. I'll tell you what, I'm not itching for a fight, but we need to defend this country as necessary. If we have to, we fight to win. But one thing for certain that we don't need it for our national defense. Our national security is not in threat, and our financial situation is so bad. The last thing we need is to see and send the troops and get further involved, because we're already involved in all those countries over there. Further involved in Syria. It makes no sense whatsoever to get involved there because there's too many.